President Trump will soon welcome the Saudi Crown Prince to the White House. Today's visit marks the start of Mohammed bin Salman's 2.5-week trip throughout the U.S.
He and President Trump are expected to discuss Iran's regional influence, the Qatar blockade, Yemen's civil war, and U.S. investment. So here to walk us through the latest is CBSN contributor Alex Kliment. He writes for Signal, a newsletter produced by G0 Media. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
You've been waiting patiently while we cover all this breaking news. We appreciate that. So what are you looking for out of this meeting between the president and MBS?
Well, I think it's important to understand the context of what's happening in Saudi Arabia first, right? Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is preparing to take the throne after his father either abdicates or passes away later this year, in the next year or so. It could be potentially a very rocky succession, right? He's a young guy. He's stepped on a lot of toes to kind of consolidate his power. So he's coming to the U.S., which has traditionally always been Saudi Arabia's most important economic and strategic partner. He wants to kind of test out the relationship and shore up the relationship with the Trump administration. He's looking for three things. One is to make sure that Washington stands behind him on Iran. Second, to court investment from American businesses, which is going to be essential as part of his plan to diversify and open up the Saudi economy. And thirdly, to secure more weapons deals from U.S. weapon suppliers. Right?
So speaking of that, some U.S. lawmakers have threatened to withhold U.S. military aid that the Saudis are using in their bombing campaign in Yemen. What sort of impact do you think that could have? Well,
there's a bill that is moving to the floor today in the Senate that would do, as you say, that would limit the ability of the U.S. to supply, to be involved in the Yemen conflict. To kind of back up, there's a civil war in Yemen right now where the Saudis, with U.S. help, have intervened on the side of the government against rebels who are believed to be backed by Iran. So it's more than anything, it's a proxy conflict between Saudi and Iran. The bill, it's doubtful whether it will pass. It is opposed by the Pentagon, by the White House, and by the GOP leadership. The bill would basically say U.S. can't be involved in Yemen without congressional oversight and approval, right? Not surprisingly, the White House is not in favor of that. It's doubtful whether it will pass. Even if it did pass, it contains a carve-out that enables the U.S. to continue to be in Yemen under the auspices of fighting al-Qaeda and terrorism, which is a pretty wide scope. So I don't think it would change much on the ground. But the symbolism is important as Crown Prince Mohammed arrives to talk with President Trump today.
Well, I mean, the Saudis have been criticized for what is a humanitarian crisis now
and rightly so,
Yemen.
Yes.
Exactly right. The other thing is there's been a lot of talk around the fact that MBS is allowing women to drive very soon. But how strongly should the United States press him for other human rights abuses that the Saudi kingdom, the family, is responsible for, including the death penalty for things like homosexuality, for things like sorcery? I mean, they put to death a lot of people there for things that we, as a country, a democracy, would not agree to. How much should President Trump press him to try to end those practices? The driving is great, but killing people for homosexuality is really a violation of human rights.
Look, we as a democracy have never put pressure on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia over those issues, and I certainly don't expect that to start under the Trump administration. I think to touch on this question of how serious the Crown Prince is about these reforms, I think another thing that both business and political leaders in the U.S. will be looking for is to see two things from the Crown Prince. One, how serious is he really about liberalizing Saudi society, even in these more limited ways that you've talked about? But secondly, equally importantly, can he pull this off without totally upending social and political stability in the kingdom? A key U.S. ally, the world's largest oil exporter. I think those two things at a broader level are what business leaders and even the White House and the State Department are going to be looking to see.